what I want to do is look at the different meanings of Hamas in the Tanakh.
Okay.
And the significance of Hamas. So one is God's soul hates Hamas. The next one is actually the first time Hamas appears in the Tanakh. And we're told Hamas was the reason for the flood. Hamas is the reason that God decided to wipe out humanity except for one family that he preserved, because the world was full of Hamas.
Let's read that.
So it's Genesis 6, 11 through 13. And 11 and 13 are really interesting because they're in what we call a chiastic structure. A chiastic structure is a sort of poetic structure where you say, you have a phrase, and then a second phrase, and then the next sentence, or a later sentence, you switch them, and then the second phrase comes first, and the first
Give me an example.
So my favorite one is when God gives this commandment, which, boy, it applies to Hamas. It says, Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech. So there you hear some alliteration, even if you don't know Hebrew. Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech. So first of all, hear the alliteration there. It's dam, 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 damo, right? So it's dam, literally 4 dams, and it begins with shofech and ends with yishafech, right? So it's ABC, CBA.
Okay.
Right, that's a very sophisticated type of chiastic structure. And in a sense, it's not very sophisticated, it's very simple. The purpose there of the chiastic structure is what does it mean? Genesis 9. He who sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. Right, and blood and man sound similar, but it's he who sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. So it's ABC, CBA. And the purpose there is clear, it's so people memorize it. Right? Once you know that in Hebrew 2 or 3 times, if you know Hebrew, you'll memorize that. Here it's more a little bit different. Here it's maybe more poetic. So here it says, we're going to read verses 11 and 13. You can read verse 12 too if you want.
The earth became corrupt before God. The earth was filled with lawlessness. When God saw how corrupt the earth was, for all flesh had corrupted its ways on earth, God said to Noah, I've decided to put an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with, what's this word?
We'll just read what you have.
Lawlessness. Mm-hmm. Because of them, I'm about to destroy them with the earth.
Right, and the word there is Hamas. Right, the word lawless in both cases is Hamas, and in this context it means probably something like violence. But what it says here, I'm going to give you my translation, and you can hear a little bit better. I'll explain the ABBA. The chiastic structure. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with Hamas. And God said to Noah, I'm skipping verse 12. God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, because the earth is filled with Hamas because of them. And behold, I will destroy the earth. So the word for corrupt and the word for destroy has the same root, shachat. So you don't hear the chiastic structure in English, but you hear it in Hebrew. So it starts vatishachet and it ends mashchitam, right, or near the end. It has at the beginning of this 3-verse section shachat and the end shachat. And then the next element is the earth was filled with Hamas. And then he says, for the earth was filled with Hamas at the end of verse 11 and the first half of verse 13, right? That's ABBA. And here Hamas they translated lawlessness. Hamas is violence in this context. But it's not just violence, it's also corruption. And we can see that here, the earth was corrupt. The word shachet, vatishachet, it was corrupted. And so here, Hamas is a synonym for vatishachet, and the earth was corrupt. Because the earth was corrupt, essentially, and the earth was filled with Hamas. So Hebrew likes to say everything twice, right? It's like they felt like an ancient Hebrew speech if they weren't heard unless they said everything twice, sometimes more than twice. Here it's really, shachat is 4 times, in fact, if you look at verse 12.
So one of my favorite parts about this, Nehemiah, because I'm thinking about, we're talking about God and God's soul. We go up to verse 5. I love that.
Read it.
It's important for us to understand what God was looking at. It says, Yehovah saw how great was man's wickedness on earth, and how every plan devised by his mind was nothing but evil all the time. And Yehovah regretted that he had made man on earth, and his heart was saddened. Yehovah said, I will blot out from the earth the men whom I created, men together with beasts, creeping things, birds of the sky, for I regret that I made them but Noah found favor with Yehovah. So,
And we need to do a whole study on this word regret as applied to God.
Oh.
And do you know what the root is there?
no, I
The
don't.
same root as my name,
Nech-
Nechem.
Nechem.
It's the Nifal, which is Lihinachem, which can also be translated to be comforted. So how does it come to mean regret? That's a separate study. Let's not go down that rabbit trail.
Okay, but I'll put that on there. But here's the
yeah,
thing that I think
yeah.
is really important. When we talk about the study on Hamas,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about the fact that the flood happened because there was so much Hamas on
Right.
earth, and God,
And that was corruption.
his soul hated Hamas.
Right.
And the part that, I wrote this down because it's just, think about this. Our God was sad. It made him sad, and it made him regret
That the earth was filled with Hamas.
that he'd made man because it was filled with Hamas. That's how strongly Yehovah feels about Hamas.